Grab some popcorn, get ready for some fun. We are talking with Matt McGee today on Meet Our Mentor. Hello, everyone. Please say hello to Mr. Matt McGee. Hello, Matt. How are you, sir?
Hi there. I'm well. How are you doing, Art?
You're so much taller than I am. I'm going to lower my camera so I look
sorry. I can come down.
Could you please? Could you just a little bit more?
Never. Should I just put my hand?
I understand congratulations are in order. I follow you, of course, on Facebook, and I saw that that you had a turkey baby on Thanksgiving in your stomach, and your wife may have an actual baby. Is that correct?
Oh, that was actually a memory from last year. So.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I thought you were pregnant again.
2 years ago. Yes. No. Now she's 18 months tomorrow. So that was.
Oh, that's a long gestation period, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you just have the one kid then? Or
no, I have a 6-year-old and an 18-month-old.
All right. Well, and then how many, I know you have 17 brothers and 5 sisters, right? I mean, how many?
Just 3 brothers and a sister.
So 3 brothers. So are you breaking records then for the family, or are you?
No, my sister has 4 kids. So
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, congratulations on your 18-month. I've been watching the Under the Sea adventure. What's the name of it again? It's
Under the Sea with Dredgy McGee.
I've been watching Under the Sea with Dredgy McGee, and I would say that it's a great representation of your work in general, everything that I've seen from you over the years. And I would not call you a minimalist. That would not be how I would describe your work. And watching, Dredgy McGee, you are throwing everything into that show except the kitchen sink, and there's a lot going on.
The kitchen sink sunk, so it's already there somewhere in the rubble. So
that's perfect. Yeah. Well, let's in case other people aren't as familiar with your work as I am, I'm going to play your reel here so everyone can get a sense of what you do, and let's take a look at Matt McGee's reel. Well, that's spectacular. I think my favorite, the thing that keeps jumping out at me every time I watch the reel is Slimer at the end of the Ghostbuster blaster. I think that's really cool. Was that just a Halloween costume, or was that actually for a thing?
No, that was a Halloween costume. We did it as a family. We were all Ghostbusters, and my son was barely 1 at the time, and he was a toddler Stay Puft Marshmallow with little squeaky shoes. So we walked around trick-or-treating, and he was squeaking with his stuffed suit, and I was going around holding the Slimer. I had a proton pack I made out of recycled stuff that had lights and stuff in it. And the thing lit up, as you could see. It was like a lantern almost on a rod.
Yeah, and was that EL wire that was going from the dome to the
EL wire, the little light inside. It was made out of a milk jug that I molded over a form of Slimer and colored. It was a lot of fun.
Uh, totally fun. Totally fun. So I think the very first thing I ever saw you do was at the festival in Seattle. I think it was the National Puppeteers of America Festival, and I think they were doing like that big, long, grassy knoll of Punch and Judy's. And if I'm remembering correctly, you did a Star Wars Punch and Judy. Am I remembering correctly?
I did. We called it Punch Wars, and go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the things that stands out to me is the like in the text scroll in the Star Wars movies is of course in every Star Wars movie except I think for one of them, and you had a text roll in your Punch and Judy Star Wars show, and I think it was written on toilet paper as it scrolled. But was it just a roll of toilet paper or?
I can't even. I think it was an actual roll because we had stuff that was legible, but it was just like paper that we rolled up, something like that. It's been a long time. I don't even think we have a recording of it, but yeah, it was fun.
And that was forever ago. And you were very like, how old were you at that festival? I mean, you got to be. Like,
I think I was almost 14.
And that wasn't even the beginning of your puppetry career, right? Am I correct in that?
No, yeah. I mean, I tell people I was basically raised by puppets. Yeah, 1999. Thanks, Nappy. That was a good festival. That was a good year. It was a great one. Yeah, I tell people I was basically raised by puppets in the wilds of Central California. Both my parents were children's theater majors. My father was a storyteller and a ventriloquist, and is a storyteller, ventriloquist, and puppeteer. So from a very early age, I was exposed to puppetry and performing arts. Yep, there he is. As a kid, so my dad for a long time was a wizard, and he had a dragon named Grork, and he would tell stories with this pet dragon. And so as a child, I mean, I grew up raised by a wizard, basically. And having that type of upbringing and then being exposed to more puppeteers and going to festivals and things like that, for me at least, it was very inspiring, and for someone, I ended up liking to make stuff with my hands and got really creative and stuff. So from the get-go, I was making things and have kind of stuck with that because of the exposure I had as a child to the arts and to puppetry and to performing. We used to tour as a family and would do shadow puppet shows with an overhead projector and would tour in a motorhome around California and get out of school for a week or two and perform.
And were you actually performing in the shadow?
Yeah, we'd all had different assignments. We'd all take turns. It was I'd move some of the puppets on the overhead, or all I had to do was like scroll through, like it was a drive sequence, and I would be spinning a wheel that had like abstract colors and shapes to make it look like they were driving through something. And it was like little things that they would give to each of us, because it was a heck of a lot easier than trying to get a babysitter for us for a week and leave us at home,
and cheaper too, I would imagine.
And cheap, exactly, yeah. They didn't have to pay us. It was more hands. They're like, hey, we feed you. Earn your keep.
And was it fun for you, or was it?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
absolutely. Because as a kid, that was normal to me, and we would be in a motorhome and driving to different areas. We'd wake up and be someplace new. We'd get to go to new schools and see all these other kids that were like my age, but I wasn't in school because I was there up on the stage, peeking out, seeing all the kids and be like, oh, look at all those kids, all those potential friends. And then we'd like go somewhere else, but it would be, it was just a different way to grow up. And then you get older and realize that other kids don't do that, and that they don't get to travel all over and go to festivals and perform, and that's not part of their routine. And that was just normal for us.
And you're the youngest in the family, right?
No, there's one younger than me.
There's one younger. So were the older siblings, like, how old were you and how old were they? And were they performing as well? And did they like it as much? I mean, do you have a whole family of puppeteers now? Or are you the only one that's picked up the mantle from your dad and mom? And
I'm the only one that caught the puppetry bug. We all performed growing up, but then once my siblings got into like junior high and high school, it got harder to get us all out. There was a time when I went solo with my dad for a couple weeks and did a like 2-person show together when I was in like 5th and 6th grade. And that was, I was more of just a performer and not like a puppeteer or anything, but the rest of my siblings had, they might have done theater and stuff in high school and or in college and things like that. But they, many of them do different things now. And even if they work in the arts, I'm the only one that's still involved in the puppetry world to the degree that I am. And yeah, I'm
And so when
the
your
crazy
mom and
person in the family.
yeah,
The insanity.
and when your mom and your dad, they were taking you to festivals early on, then
I think the earliest one I can remember was probably when I was maybe 9 or 10. I might have gone to, no, I went to some earlier when I was maybe 6 or 7, but I didn't participate as much. I'd maybe go see some of the shows, but it wasn't until I was maybe 9 or 10 that I got to take, they had like a workshop for kids. There was a festival, I think in San Diego or somewhere in LA that they had workshops just for kids. It was almost like a daycare, but it was they had puppet projects that you'd work on every day, and that was where you went every day while the adults went to various workshops, and then you'd go see the performances and things.
Was that Lynn Jennings festival? Do you remember offhand?
I don't know. The person who did, it wasn't Lynn who taught the kids class. It was someone else. But that was actually, I just saw that I have the puppet that I built. One of the puppets I built from that hanging up back there. I could run and grab it. It was a little marionette that I made when I was like 9 or 10 at this workshop. But
did you send me a picture of that? Do I have a picture from you from that festival? I think
you might have a picture from that festival, but that's a different puppet. But yeah, if you have that picture, it's I have like a rod puppet, and I'm next to a lady.
I know.
Robin. I think her name Robin.
And that was probably from that festival, I would imagine.
Yes,
I'll take a look and see if I can find that. So then, what was the very first show that you sort of did all on your own and all by yourself?
The Punch and Judy was one that I did by myself. But the one that, like, the first time that I kind of did my own full show wasn't until college. I had participated in a creative competition called Odyssey of the Mind all through elementary and high school, and that was problem solving within like the constraints of like an 8-minute skit, and I always incorporated puppetry into that somehow. That was sort of my outlet, was like, hey, we could add, what if and that's where I experimented with puppetry and would incorporate, but that was still with a team, a group of people. So it wasn't until college that I started doing a solo, like full-on puppet stage and 45-minute show for kids and touring. That was after I went to Puppet Fest Midwest, and that was where I was like re-inspired to like, I could do this. Yeah, let's do this. And I put together a show and started touring in the summer times between college.
Nice. Here's the picture that we were just talking about. That's the one, right?
Yes.
So that's from the 1995 Puppet Festival up in San Diego, and that's Robin, right?
Yeah, Robin. So I would have been 10, and
is that a Bunraku style or kind of like tabletop?
It was kind of like a rod. I think it was like a rod puppet, but she was helping me. I made a drummer, I think, and he had a cheese head.
Of course.
His head was like a block of cheese. They had like foam and things in different shapes. And so I worked with what I had and was like, he looks like he's a cheese head guy.
Cheese head.
Yeah.
So what was the show that you built when you were in college and that you were doing during the summers and everything?
It was The Adventures of Zeet Nagley. It was a furry little blue alien named Zeet Nagley. And I wanted to create like a series of shows where he'd go on different adventures. I actually have him right here. This was one of the first. He's very old, and yeah. Hi. And the first show I did was called Bedtime for Bedbugs, and it was about him having to go tell a bedtime story to a colony of space bedbugs because the little boy whose bed they lived under was away at summer camp, and so because he was gone, his mother hadn't come to tell him a bedtime story in a week, and so they couldn't go to sleep without one. So he had to go and tell him a bedtime story. But yeah.
And did he get smaller in the show? Because I thought,
Yeah.
I remember. I think maybe you and I showcased together, and you did like 5 minutes of it, and I got to see a little chunk of it because I remember seeing it, and then I remember him being like really small. All of a sudden, it was cool.
Yeah, he turned into a bed bug himself. Let's see if I still have. I should have that one here. Yeah, he transformed into like a bed bug version. I'm not seeing it. It was here, but I'm not seeing it. But then I did another show with him a couple years later, the following year, and he had a small version like this. It wasn't the bed bug version, but he could walk around. And
yeah,
hi there.
I think that's the one that I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea was to have a whole series of him as the lead character, going on different adventures.
Yeah, that every summer there'd be a different show with him, and there was one called Journey to the Junkyard, and there was like a junkyard man and up there, and all the stuff there was made out of found objects and things. But I did that for a few summers, 3 or 4 summers, and then there. The first summer I did it, the stage was made out of an umbrella with fabric that would hang from it, and it was put up on a stand, and it was very, very just like low budget, thrown together, cardboard, masking tape, and paint.
But it looks great, and I love the chains that are holding up the little playboard and everything, and the big rivet looking things on the front and sides of the stage. It looks terrific.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was fun. It upgraded the following years. I think it was one of the Puppet Fest Midwest that someone performed with a shower tent that they had converted into a puppet stage, and it looked kind of like a rocket ship. And though they didn't use it like a rocket ship, I went, oh my gosh,
it's a rocket ship.
It's a rocket ship, and it was portable, and you could like take it up. It had tent poles and stuff, and lightweight. And mine was like this crappy like umbrella with fabric, and there was no place to put anything back there because I was in this little thing with a pole in the middle. And so I was like,
so having to dance around the pole while you're doing the show. It's great. And that's holding up the entire thing so you can't touch it.
Yeah. And
nice.
so
nice.
Having the tent had its own, problems and issues, but it was still a lot more efficient and looked a lot cleaner from the outside.
Yeah. Now your mom is a builder, right? She's no? I thought she was the builder more than anything else. No.
She helped build some of the Grorks that my dad performed with.
Yeah.
My dad was more of a builder and the fabricator. She could sew and she could help out in that regard. So I picked up from both of them. But then as I started dabbling in things through like Odyssey of the Mind, like I said, that's where, and taking the workshops, that's where it started to I started to just really explore and hone my craft over the years.
And so name of the program is Meet Our Mentors. And so your dad, your mom, obviously a mentor from you from a very early age and exposed you to a lot of puppetry, both by performing the family shows, doing what they were doing, and then going to festivals. Who aside from your folks were inspiring to you as well?
Well, growing up, one of the puppeteers that my father kind of introduced me to was Rob DeArc. He had his own puppet theater in Riverside, California for about 10 years called Kid Stuff. And every time, my grandparents lived just outside of Riverside. So every time we'd go to visit them, we could go, yeah, that's us last year. But we've stayed in touch for a long time. But when I was a kid, as a family, we'd always go, whenever we were visiting my grandparents, we'd go and see the shows that he was doing there at the theater. And afterwards, he'd let us backstage and he'd show us all how he did everything. And that was the best for me. It was seeing it was awesome because he did a lot of puppetry, where you're in black. And so you can't see the puppeteers. And so the puppets sort of come to life and take on this believability that's different than just like the hand puppets. It's like, oh my gosh, how are the legs moving and everything? And that was always very exciting and inspiring for me. And then you'd go backstage and see everything. It was just like this magical world. And he was one of the people to sort of popularize the pop-up puppets. And he showed that to me as a kid. And so I started doing that because it was an easy way to make puppets that you could carry around. And then I thought, well, what if I used paint paint mixing paddles and made the same concept bigger.
Because
And
what
that's
was he
when
using? He was using like popsicle sticks,
tongue
right?
depressors.
Oh,
Yeah.
tongue depressors.
Yeah. Because they were like a pop-up, like a puppet you could put in your pocket. So I started doing them with paint mixing paddles. Yeah, there's some of them there. And then that's what Punch Wars was done for the Punch and Judy Festival. It was all these paint paddle pop-up puppets, which made them bigger and easier to see from afar. But the stuff he would do with the little pop-up puppets and the details and the 3 dimensions he would get with craft foam and materials and stuff was just, it's still like, if you look him up and check out some of his work, he's got just the most amazing work that he does with these little pop-up puppets. And so that and all the technical stuff that he would do, he'd create puppets with wires and cable controls and stuff. And as a kid, that I thought, I want to do that. And so that's what I started tinkering with in Odyssey of the Mind. Is like, I want a puppet whose fingers can move or his eyes can blink. And then I started doing more puppets on my own outside of that. When I was 12, actually going back to the festival in 96, I was 10 or 11. That's when I met or got introduced to the work of Nick Barone. And I saw his puppets on display at an exhibit, and then saw his Tricks and Treats show. And as an 11-year-old boy, that show was just the like silliest, stupidest, funniest thing I had seen.
It was ridiculous, wasn't it? That was the very first show I ever saw Nick perform was Tricks or Treats, and it slayed me because it's so dumb, scary. The lead character, it's so creepy. Because it was not creepy at all. It was not scary at all, which was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Like as a kid, it'd be like, look what the man in the hat does to the cat, and it'd be like this old guy and this little like cat rod puppet, and you go meow meow meow. And the man would just go, hey, and it was so dumb. But as a kid, I was just like on the floor laughing. And I thought, who is this guy? And he had this puppet, this ogre puppet from his Jack and the Beanstalk show in the exhibit. And I remember it was just like this sense of style that I was starting to lean into or get exposed to. I saw that and went, oh my gosh, you have it.
It has a very, very, very special place in my living room. It's one of my most, it is the most prized puppet I have. It's his work.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That was so, being exposed to puppetry and having this background and this history with it. That was like another turning point in my sort of development. I was exposed to the work of Rob DeArc. I started doing like these tongue depressor puppets, the pop-up puppets. And then I also around the same time, I saw Nick's work, and I saw that puppet and I went, oh my gosh, I just love everything about this. I love the details. I love the design. I love the textures. And it was around that time I was in 6th grade and was joking around with my friend, and we started coming up with this Star Wars spoof. And I thought, I want to make a Star Wars spoof movie. I had been dabbling in filmmaking and stop motion and stuff, but I was like, I want to make like a live action Star Wars spoof. I'm going to write it. I want to really make this. And so I thought, I wanted this Yoda character puppet, and the ogre was like the inspiration straight up for that. So I believe it was when I was 12 years old, that summer, I was kind of bored with playing video games or watching my brothers play video games, and they were just sitting there doing this, and I was like, man, I want to make this movie. I want to start building this puppet for this Yoda character. And so my dad carved out a section of the garage. It was his old tin roof garage, and had a little corner for me in the middle of the summer in California in the Central Valley, where it gets to be like over 100 degrees. And I'm here sweating, snipping at a block of foam. I didn't know anything about patterning and like making, hollow shapes with flat foam and 3-dimensional. I was just carving. And so I had this block of foam, and I made this puppet, and then finished it like the following year, and then took it to the festival and had it on display in the exhibit. And I filmed with it, and it was this bulky, I've got it right here. It's this bulky thing, but you can see how it's a direct descendant or inspiration from Nick's work. It's still survived. It's completely like fallen apart, but
Oh my God. It just screams Nick Barone, doesn't it? I
right?
mean, it absolutely screams Nick Barone. Yeah. Oh, and you've got eye movement too.
Oh yeah,
Yay.
this was the first time I like had built a puppet that like incorporated all this, like the eye movement and the mechanics, and I was so proud of it. Even though, imagine me being smaller and younger, hefting this bulky, like cumbersome puppet and trying to do anything on camera with it. So yeah,
Brilliant.
so
Now Nick was known for just bringing people out to his house and to his shop to, like whenever I would ask him, "Oh, what are you using to do this?" He'd say, "Well, why don't you come out to Redwood City and hang out with me for an afternoon? We'll
yeah,
build some puppets." And I learned so much from him just by building a puppet with him. And I would learn a technique, and God, and this is what he killed me every time. He was using like a paint palette thing to apply contact cement at one
contacts,
point.
the
I was like,
gel
oh, right.
formula.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's genius. That's genius. And so I would practice that because it took a while to get good at that. And then I would finally be good at that. And I'd go and be like, oh yeah, I'm using that technique. And it'd be like, oh, I'm doing this now. That's no
Yeah.
good. You got to, and I was like, ah, and he was always recreating like that. Did you ever get a chance to build with him?
Yeah, in fact, I think it was when I was a teenager. He had me come out for a weekend, and I spent like a day with him in his workshop and in his little garage, and he just built a puppet with me. It was just like the base of, not all the details, but we built the puppet. He showed me how to use the glues and how to use the spray adhesive to put the fabric on, and I just made this base puppet with him for the day, and it was super awesome. And then so like I kind of stayed in touch with him, and he was just such a great mentor. And I remember when I was performing my own show in college, I stayed with him for a night because I was performing, I think, somewhere in the area, and he came to see the show. And I think I even traveled with him for like a day to one of his live shows. And so I got in this car, and he was showing me how he had his setup and everything, and
Oh my God. It was just a
set up the
machine,
stage.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, he had such a system, that's no wonder that was his full-time job, because he just, that was what he did. And seeing his house, this was when he had moved to San Jose, and so seeing his house with his like Indiana Jones bathroom and stuff, and just the themed rooms,
and the room dedicated to
Legos,
Lego,
yeah, it was just so such an inspiration. Even when he was living in I guess Redwood City, his house was just this museum. You'd go into his living room, and there was like artifacts and puppets and things. And I mean, even that Punch and Judy festival, he did this Punch and Judy, and his punch puppet that he made was this like grotesque monster that I just like loved and thought, oh my gosh, I'm just such a fan. And then when I was working on my Star Wars film, he let me borrow a box of his puppets to use as extras. Yep, there it is. So there's me in the front.
Yeah, there's you, and then just above you, and then to the in the center, there's Nick with his Punch and Judy puppets, right?
Yeah, it's this purple monster with horns, and Rob DeArc's actually sitting right next to me. So that was with the top hat. So like two of my mentors basically are the inspirations for a lot of the work to come. Were there at that same festival, and I got to see their shows. And but yeah, he gave me this box of puppets that I got to borrow and use as extras in like the Jabba the Hutt type scene of my Star Wars film that I never finished. So there's just clips. It was one of those things. Yeah, everything fell apart. It's here in junior high and stuff. But there's clips of his puppets, and I had my friends under the tables and doing some of these, throwaway puppets not throwaway puppets, but things that he was willing to let me run amok with. And he was just so generous. And I think, the last time I did a show in California, it was my holiday show, and he came and saw it. And that might have been one of the last times I saw him before I moved to DC. And then,
yeah. Yeah, he was. He was. I hope to be as generous as he was with whatever I've got to give, because
Absolutely.
there's more people than I can count that, and you can always see it. You know, when somebody's been influenced by Nick, you could always see it right in their work. Like Stacy is one of those
Right.
people. You know, you could see it right in her work. She posted something on Facebook today. It was, and you can just see the influence. I was always. I know we'll move on to your other mentors soon, but I was always amazed at how I always thought his lip sync was really sharp because it would always like the mouths would snap closed. And I didn't realize until I put one of his puppets on that it was the way that he was building his puppets that made that happen and made the lip sync so much sharper and
Right.
snappier. Just brilliant stuff.
Yeah. 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 No, he was such a great influence. And I'm trying to, there was something else I was going to say. That same mentality though, that I kind of picked up from him of trying new things. So that's kind of what I think my career sort of, as I moved to DC and spent about almost 10 years there working in theater as an actor. But then people found out I did puppetry and I started getting hired as a puppet designer. And different from like the Zeet Nagley hand puppet shows. This was like theatrical stuff and big things or small things or like, this things that had more of an organic or earthy feel to it, depending on the show. And so that sense of experimentation and exploration, I think I picked up from both Rob and Nick, of just trying new things, trying new materials, trying new mediums. And I think that's why, looking back, I look at my work and there's so many different mediums and different materials, different styles that I've worked in now. And that's all to do with not just them, but so many of the puppeteer community, and going to these festivals and seeing their work and taking their workshops and being inspired by them. So as much as I can pinpoint a couple of more significant mentors, the community as a whole has been absolutely influential and inspirational in my path and journey as a performer, as an artist, as a creator. So that's something you can't and you get that by having other people share their craft at the festivals and things, and sharing their techniques and sharing their performances. And that's how I work, is just absorb it and go, okay, now what about this? And what if you do it well with spray foam? I've now made like props, I've made puppets, I've made like costume pieces out of spray insulation foam and things. And I keep
Is that what the little sandcastle is made from Dredgy McGee? Is that
yeah,
made from spray foam? Is that?
Yeah. And then in fact, there's a ventriloquist. There's these little dummies, and their whole heads are cast out of spray foam. The originals were sculpted, and then I took a mold of that and then filled it with spray foam and packed it in, and it made this lightweight like styrofoam head that I could carve. And
that's a very Rob d'Arc sculpture right there, by the way.
Yes.
We just held up. I mean,
again, this is the asymmetry. He's even teaching a workshop on that this next summer. You got the little smile and you got the little.
I would love, like, he showed me a few puppet heads where the line was different. You could go across this way, and if you turn the puppet this way, it would change, and it could go across this way, so
diagonal.
It would change. Oh, it was just an inspirational, absolutely.
Right, you should take his workshop. You sign up for his workshop next summer. All you listeners out there.
I may. Is that at the National, or is that just a festival that he's doing in Seattle?
No, I think he's doing it at the. I think he's doing it at the National. He's teaching several. One on L200 fabrication and stuff, and I've taken that, and that's been a lot of patterning and creating puppets.
Are you doing like the bigger puppets with the L200? Is that what you're doing for the bigger puppets, or
sometimes I've done large scale puppets with that. As you saw from like the reel, there were some like giants, and that was all made out of like L200. And I've done just regular, you take something like this guy, and his skull is made out of just L200 that I patterned off of a form that I made. And so, yeah, applying principles from both artists.
Yeah. And like I said, Dredgy McGee is a good example of Tons of things, just tons of things. So where was that performed? And what was, I mean, I thought, oh, great, I'll sit down and watch this. It'll be like a 45-minute show. And I started it and I looked down at the time. I was like, this is a 2-hour and 6-minute show. What is going on here? And it's just like one style of puppetry after another. Then you go into shadow, then you go into rod puppets, and you have, I mean, it's just nonstop. I mean, so where was that? And what was that all about?
So it started as a experimental piece, a one-man show for the Center for Puppetry Arts experimental puppet theater that they do every year. They're taking submissions now. So if you've got a piece, any of you got a piece you want to experiment with, you could apply. I did. I was in DC and I know they were taking submissions mainly from people in Atlanta, but I said, hey, I've got this crazy idea about this half pirate carried around by a deep sea diver and hosting like some variety show. And I sent them the pitch and they said, yeah, that sounds experimental for sure. So they gave me the green light and so I built some puppets for it. And of course, like you said, it's what was the term you used?
You're not a minimalist.
Minimalist. It was not minimal. It was a one-man show, but I had like scenic like elements. And I had a treasure chest that was made out of cardboard and painted and decorated that these light up ghost band would pop out of. I had a sea monkey that I had a fake hand with my hand inside that I controlled, and the sea monkey would go, ah, 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 and it looked like I was holding this. And I was just this like, I had this costume with this fake torso behind me. And I did this 15-minute piece. And as I was developing it, I saw that the Jim Henson Foundation was taking submissions for like grants and stuff. And I thought, I think this idea might have something here. It might be crazy enough to work. So I pitched it to them. And after I did my performance, I have filmed, I took clips from it and put it as part of the application and got to get a workshop grant to help develop it further. And so this was in 2019. And in 2020, I did a week-long workshop literally the week before DC went into lockdown because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
We were like hesitant to even meet but they had said like no more than 10. And I said, well, there's only 4 of us meeting. So it was me and a few other performers, actors. I had like a 1-act and we experimented with puppetry styles. And we were going to do that 1-act at a regional festival in North Carolina. And that all got canceled. Nothing happened, but I was developing it. And so I applied for a production grant, which is what you can do to keep the momentum going on your piece. And I had reached out to other artists and collaborators and designers, and because they were all, home for the shutdown, they were all willing to like work on designs, and I was paying them and stuff to give them a little extra income. And so I applied for this production grant, and they needed a theater interested in it. So I reached out to some theaters in the area. So that was performed.
And were you still in Washington, D.C. at the time?
I was still at D.C. at the time. And so I got the grant. I had a commitment from First Stage Theater in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. And they were committed when it was feasible to do so. But they were definitely on board. So I started working on the full draft of the script, and I started developing the puppets and collaborating with these other designers. And all the stuff happened. And the show, this was in 2020, and so the show didn't happen until June of this year. It took that long for everything to fall into place. So that was the culmination of 3 years of work, and I built over like 35 puppets, ranging from small little, literally glow in the dark puppets that we just turned all the lights off and had this like dancing jellyfish ballet. That was super cool. From that to like a giant 16-foot tall inflatable sea monster puppet. That all those puppets were probably 95% fabricated by me, and then I had to write the script, and I was the star and the director and like the co-producer. It was so much.
How long did you get to run for?
We ran for 3 weeks. So this was meant to be a theatrical production. It wasn't a puppet show. It was a theater. It was a play that just had a lot of puppetry in it. So, but that was hard to, I think, market, because you think puppets, so okay, it's for kids. Well, not as many people would come out. So it's hard to market things when, if depending on you're trying to figure out what your target audience is, because the show and the script wasn't necessarily for younger kids. It was for like older kids and adults because of some of the themes and the messages. But there was still a lot of magic and whimsy that little kids would like, but the conversations and dialogue was maybe not geared for them. So it was a hard like middle ground of like, what is this family entertainment kind of
Yeah, the
stuff?
story had lots of subtlety to it that would be missed by the younger audience,
Right.
and because it goes quite a while. I mean, even me as an adult, I got a little wiggly too. So I would imagine the younger kid, although I got an attention span of like 15 minutes. So,
well, I appreciate you holding out this long for this conversation.
No, it's been exhausting. It's been exhausting, Matt.
But no, so that was how that all came to be. It was, and yeah, it was the biggest thing that I had done. It was a culmination of everything I have done up until this point in my career, as an artist, as a puppet builder, as a performer, as a writer. So that this was like basically my thesis. If I was in grad school, this was like my end result.
Absolutely. That's what I mean. As I was watching it, that's what I wasn't thinking thesis, but I was thinking this is a real culmination moment in Matt's career. And we're seeing a lot of stuff that at least I've seen you do in smaller ways, both for other productions and for your own stuff. I was like, oh yeah, it's Matt is all over the place in this. And that was really fun. Do you see it having a life beyond the 3-week run, or?
I hope so. I mean, we filmed it and I released it for a period of time online for people to rent. Also, so that some of those proceeds could go back to the designers and artists who worked on it. And I took that down recently. And so just to give it a breather, I would be more than happy to have it remounted somewhere and for it to find a second life, and also to revise it a bit and learn from, because there was so much going on. It was hard to like make everything be exactly as you wanted. You just kind of went, okay, this is what it is. But even so, for all that, it was like, wow, I can't believe we pulled it together as good as we did, because it was a lot.
How many other actors did you have? Was it still 4 like you were?
No, there was
or did you add
6
more?
There were 6 other actors.
Yeah.
And they played, actor parts and puppetry parts. And then we had a whole design team. There was a scenic designer, there was costume designers, there was lighting and sound designers. We had the whole gamut. And I brought in some other like musical artists that wrote some original songs. It wasn't a musical, but it's a variety show. So there's some music elements in it. And yeah, it was such a collaborative effort that I would love to have it take on another life elsewhere. And I've been looking into some venues and stuff. But so far, nothing's set in stone. Nothing's on the horizon yet. But yeah, definitely. Right now, it's the whole show is in storage.
Yeah, the theater community is still sort of coming back to life. It's just it's a long haul. So you worked as an actor and then as a puppet designer in DC, and then you came back home to Hanford, California. What brought you back home?
It was an interesting time. So 2020, we were in a 2-bedroom apartment. I was renting a studio to work. I was renting a storage unit to store some of these puppets from previous productions. Well. And we thought, we've been cooped up here. We don't have a backyard. We have the parks were all sort of wrapped up, and we had a 4-year-old at the time, 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and we thought we need more space. We need to expand. And if we combined all our rents, maybe we could get a home. And as we started looking, we found out we were expecting our second child, and we're like, okay, now we definitely need more space. And long story short, we just couldn't, because we were both freelancing and hadn't been working as much with the shutdown. We didn't qualify for anything, and so my parents had moved out, and we're looking to sell their home. And they thought, well, if you need a place to stay, they had the workshop space that I grew up dabbling in puppetry, and they knew I had this deadline to build all these puppets for Dredgy and for other projects. In fact, I was doing a film with Rob DeArc of one of his characters, Pip and Squeak, right there, that he originated back in the 80s and 90s and during kid stuff. And we were making a short film, and I was kind of taking over. I am now the performer of Pip and Squeak. And so all this was happening at the same time. And so we put all our stuff in storage in DC, came out here, thought we'd be here for 6 months, built some puppets. And then we had our baby and all this stuff was going on. We're like, we're going to be here longer than 6 months. So we've been here now over 18 months. And and are figuring out what the next steps are. Everyone, it's been a limbo period for sure, but it's been so great to be back in on my roots where I dabbled in puppetry, but now doing it on a professional level.
And you went to college not more than an hour away, or maybe a couple hours away from you at Fresno, right? I mean, so
right. So yeah, and the dean found out, or the department chair found out last year when I got here, and so for last fall and last spring, I was teaching an online course on puppetry for educators. While I was doing all this stuff, I'd be like, "Hi, welcome to class. I'm flying out to Oregon to film a short film. Join me there, where I'll talk about puppetry while we're in the middle of filming." And I will say that grading final projects and stuff last spring, the same week of tech for Dredgy, I would not recommend that for any artists. So
yeah, good.
But yeah, a lot. It's been a period of transition and limbo for lots of people, and myself included. So it's been a neat experience to be back, and now we're ready to looking forward as to where life will take us. So
fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you continue to do with puppetry and performance in general, and I'm really glad to hear that you're sharing. I know you teach workshops at festivals as well, and do you have workshops coming up at the National as well?
Yeah, in fact, I'll be teaching one on making inflatable puppets, and sharing some of the things I've learned. There was 2 inflatable puppets in Dredgy, and I've made a couple of others, or helped for other productions. So I'll be sharing a little bit of what I've learned and how to fabricate stuff to make big, lightweight, inflatable puppets.
Neat. And your workshops, I've heard, I haven't taken one yet, but I've heard that your workshops are always fun. I remember sitting in a workshop with you with Paul Mesner. I think we sat in and did that workshop.
It was Puppet Fest Midwest, in the Rod Puppet workshop, and we just sat at the same table cracking jokes like the whole time, laughing. It was a great time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Meet Our Mentors, and thank everyone out there. You bet. And thanks everyone out there for joining in. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, say they have millions and millions of dollars and want to fund a production of Dredgy McGee, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, they can look up my information at mattamagical.com. They can find me on Facebook. They can find me on Instagram at mattamagical. And you can follow my work there. I also have a Patreon. If you want to support more of this kind of stuff, it's patreon.com/mattamagical. And
I was checking that out today, and some of the bonuses that you get look pretty sweet. And for not that much, pretty cheap and pretty sweet. So worth checking out.
Yes, definitely. Please. And then, on my website, all the contact info is there if you want to get in touch with me more directly. So, and see more of my work there. Absolutely. And definitely on Instagram.
Yeah, Matt's website is definitely worth checking out. There's lots of images of all of the different puppets that he's built, and just really, really fun stuff. Matt, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Thank you,
As
Art.
always, it's a pleasure just chatting and hanging out with you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.